the visa they were going to be on, which is called the J-1 visa, was a cultural exchange visa that actually came out of the Fulbright era, that was intended to really teach foreign students how to run a business, from the American perspective. So really to get the nuts and bolts of how the work was done on the farm, but also the business side of it and the marketing side of it. And then the idea was that these foreign students would take that back to their countries and kind of implement the American model. So, a lot of lofty ambitions. But they signed up, they were told they had to pay some recruitment fees, travel fees, paperwork fees, etc. That amounted to upwards of $3,000 for each of them, which was a significant amount for Guatemalan students. And when they got to Nebraska, it was not as promised. It was a swine production farm called Livingston Enterprises. So
No,
relatively,
they knew it was a pig farm, right? I mean,
they did.
that wasn't a surprise. That's what they were
No,
coming
that
to
part
learn
was not
about.
a surprise.
Yeah.
I think there was perhaps an idea that it wasn't going to be as industrial as it was. Yeah, because the websites, everything they could learn about it, the websites make it look like, this family farm that started with one pig, etc. Uh, so you're right. They did know that it was going to be pigs. They, uh, but they were told, they had a very specific training program that gets approved by the State Department. It's written out. Everybody signs it. The employer signs it. Their recruiter, who acts as a broker between them and the employer, signs it under oath. And one of the things they attest to is that these students will not be used as general labor workers. They're there for this internship. But when they got there, that's exactly what happened. They were treated as general labor. The training was not training. They didn't have any training, in fact, or they were told to follow people and learn things, which resulted in a lot of harm to them, but harm to the animals, as we'll talk about, foreseeable harm to both of them. And when they inquired about the training program and safety, they were retaliated against and eventually fired, which left them in a big bind because they had gone into debt to come here. So, as a farm worker, lawyer, that type of bait and switch is not necessarily new to me, but I'm excited to talk about it for people for whom it is new.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably everybody listening knows it's bad, but we don't have all that many details about exactly in what ways it's bad. So that's what we want. And let's get a few more details out of the way. Let's talk about who the players are, because the way this visa program works, I read the complaint, but there's only so much you can glean from reading the complaint. There's this Worldwide Farmers Exchange, which is one of the entities, and then LEI Enterprises is actually the pig farm. So, how do they relate to each other and to the J-1 program?
Right. So actually, this is baked into the J-1 program as a way, I think, to facilitate recruitment of foreign students. That there is what they call a sponsor, which is basically like a recruitment agency, and that's Worldwide Farmers Exchange. So they're U.S. based. In this case, they happen to have a Guatemalan recruiter who finds the students, recruits them, relays all the promises of the program, gets them to sign the papers, explains everything that's going to happen. Meanwhile, the U.S. part of Worldwide Farmers is actually helping draft and get the paperwork for the State Department ready. So in this case, I'm sure they helped draft a phased training program that I was talking about before, that the host, that's the LEI Enterprises in this case, will sign and attest to. And those two are working together to create the training program, but then Worldwide Farmers would kind of submit that to the State Department for approval. So they're really this kind of broker in the middle of the foreign students and the host. And earlier I called them employer. They're not technically an employer because they're not supposed to be employing these interns. So they are the host, and they will be
de facto
the ones training. Yeah, the de facto employer. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, and this woman in Guatemala who works with Worldwide, she's one of the defendants as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another woman who's a defendant, just to sort everybody out.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the Guatemalan defendant was the Guatemalan recruiter. So she was in Guatemala. Her last name is Cifuentes. And then Ashley, she is the president of Worldwide Farmers. So she's in charge of the recruitment agency.
How big is this program? And is it just animal agriculture? Is it the whole gamut? Is this a big deal? It's so interesting that it's run by the State Department and not the Ag Department.
Absolutely. Although that might be changing under Trump. But yes, it is really interesting. And I think it's run by the State Department because it was an exchange program. So the J-1 program itself is pretty vast because it also includes au pairs, things like that, and camp counselors. Yeah. So and those are
All
different
sorts of
types of
exploited
J-1, but yeah.
people.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And then within that, these plaintiffs were on the internship/trainee J-1 visa, which is pretty specific. And in that category, I think animal ag takes up a big chunk of it. And then I know they also have like vineyards and things like that. So there is an ag aspect to it. I don't think they're being brought though to do like vegetables. I think because we already have a system to fill those needs.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get a little to some of the other programs as well to get immigrants in legally but not permanently.
Right.
Which seems to be always the goal. All
Yeah.
right. Can you go a little bit more into what the offer was? Like what the offer was regarding pay, regarding conditions, and maybe worldwide standards, that this offer was supposed to fit into, so that the kind of things that they heard about that reassured them that this was going to be a good deal.
Yeah. So Worldwide Farmers promised them through this Guatemalan agent, number one, that it would be a Monday through Friday job at 45 hours a week, which sounds pretty reasonable. And not a job, I said job, but I mean a training program. So Monday through Friday, 45 hours. If they wanted to work more than that, they'd have the opportunity. They would get what they thought was, it's called a stipend in the program because this is not supposed to be a job, but they thought a $2,500 stipend per month with the opportunity to get a little more if they wanted to spend a little more time. They would have weekends off. They would have housing provided to them. They thought their commutes to and from the farm would be provided to them. They expected to be able to partake in American cultural opportunities, which is also part of the program. That is a J-1 visa requirement. And that probably could mean anything, but the idea is to kind of get exposed to American culture.
Like the parts of the country that contain huge pig farms, probably don't have that many things that probably doesn't have a lot of Broadway shows.
No,
or whatever we think of as American culture. I don't know.
That's true. I wonder what the original thought was.
I'm sure Nebraska has good theater. I'm not saying it doesn't, but the part of Nebraska where the pig farms are.
Yeah.
All right. And you mentioned they had to spend a lot of money to take part of the program. You already told us that. And they ended up borrowing a lot of that money because these are not well-off people. And there was like a literal bait and switch right before they left, right?
Right. Yeah. I didn't even talk about that. Right. So they were expecting housing to be free, as I said. The night before they flew out to Nebraska, the Worldwide Farmers agent had them sign a document that said they would be charged for housing and a commute. And basically they were told if they didn't sign it, they couldn't fly out. So not a lot of choice there. They'd already spent the money. Yeah. And suddenly they were signing off on, hundreds of dollars a month for housing.
Yeah, which given their stipend was not enormous, but they did end up earning even less than their stipend, right?
Right. Correct.
All right. So as to the work itself, what kind of training did they receive? I know this was kind of a long, detailed story, but give us the picture. Yeah. And the kind of work they did and the kind of training they received.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll tell you, this was a learning process for me too, because coming from a field farm worker background, I didn't know a lot about what happens in the animal production world, and it opened my eyes a lot. So it's bad. Okay. So one of their first jobs was what they call processing newborn piglets. what was I gonna say? Trigger warning, I guess. But, yeah, they apply a tattoo gun to the piglet's ears to give them identifying marks, and they cut off their tails with scissors, which I'm told is so that they don't, bite each other's tails, I think is the idea.
Right, right.
Right.
Tail docking, it's called.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, those are, um, dangerous, kind of serious processes, I think especially cutting off the tails, but they were not trained in that, they were supposed to be trained in how to do this. So when one of the plaintiffs was tattooing, one of the piglets began bleeding profusely. They didn't get any instruction from anyone about whether he was doing it correctly, and sometimes, the pigs did bleed out and die, and, even then, they didn't, like, retrain or help the plaintiffs learn how to do this correctly. I mean, they were most of the time being told to just follow whoever was already doing it, which often was another J-1 worker.